Time's up. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have the pleasure of seeing a beautiful work of post-lake embellishment by Charley Phillips, right?
Charley Phillips.
Charley Phillips is going to show us how to put beads on platters and vases. I'm going to let Charley have it. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. I'm originally from Washington State. Been here for 15 years. Almost used to this heat, but not quite. Originally, I started out as just wood carving, and this is one of my pieces that I did with sunflowers and carving the basket weave into it. And then I decided I wanted to figure out a different way to do it so that I didn't have to have my husband make the boxes up for me. And so I tried turning a basket and carving the basket weave into it. And that worked out pretty good. And then I decided I wanted to try doing the basket of illusion. And this is one of the first ones that I've done. And it turned out all right. It was interesting. I did crack it up here when I was trying to hold it in the lathe when I was turning off the bottom of it. Learned a little bit from that. And then this is another type that I did. And I figured I could just put a candle in there or take my rings off and put it in there and they'd be safe. I wasn't much on Halloween yet. And I really like this. And then when I was doing the wood carving classes on how to do the sunflowers and stuff, they wanted to know how to do this. And pretty much it went from teaching them how to do wood carving to doing the basket of illusion. So now when I go to a wood carving event, then I usually bring a whole bunch of turned basswood ready for them to put beads on and design a pattern on it. So that's working out pretty good, but used to be very involved in the wood carving, and now I show them how to do the beading on there, and then I wait and wait for something else to happen, or maybe make a mistake and I have to show them how to fix it. But yeah, it used to be very intense on the wood carving, with the teaching them how to do the lines here. That wasn't too hard. Hardest part is helping them learn how to design the colored pattern. And I really enjoy that part of it. And I'm trying to get them to get interested in doing burning in the middle of it, but pretty much they just want to do this part. I'm going to show you how to do how I turn it. I've got some slides or some pictures. That's a bunch of the turnings that I've done. The next one is I use basswood, and I cut a circle out, and those are 1.5 inches to 1 inch, depending on how big the platter is. Here I am, I'm the next picture there, I'm just drawing into the design, or the shape for the tendon, and I flipped it, I put a tendon in, and then first I just push it up against the chuck, and then I draw the line on there for how big the tendon's supposed to be. Put a tendon in it, then flip it around and put it into the jaws, and then immediately do another tendon, and then the next slide. Okay, then I shape the bottom of it for the bottom of the platter here, the shape right here, and then I true up the side of it, and then before I put the beads on it, I need to sand it to make sure there's no tear out whatsoever. Basswood, when I'm turning it, I use a scraper. It tends to do a little bit better than a bowl gouge. and to go very slow when you're turning the basswood. The lay is going really fast, but when you're moving the tool across the wood, you want to go very slow, otherwise you can tear it out easy. It is a very soft wood. There, I'm sanding it. In the next slide, I start with my 1/4-inch beading tool, and I'm just marking the size of it, not really doing a bead out of it. And then I go to my 1/8 beater, and I just mark in the size of the beads, mark them out so they're spaced correctly, and then I come back on the next one, next slide, and then I'm beading it, completing it, and then I use my pointing tool. It looks like a teardrop, and I shape the larger bead on the outside. And on the second picture on this slide, I am using a piece of wood. It's some edge trimming that I got here at Wood World without any glue on it. I had to order a whole roll of it, but I was trying to use the edge banding that had glue on it, and then little droplets of glue would fly out and kind of land on your fingers, and that was pretty hot. Kind of burn your fingers. And it did work really well, and it's nice and thin, and on the plate like this, I'm using the end grain and sticking it straight into the piece of wood, the end grain. If it was on a hollow form, then I'm using the side of the edge banding to stick it in there like that. It works really well. Here, I've flipped it back around. Go back one slide. Okay, okay, next slide. I've turning off the bottom, inside of the bottom there. I've moved the tailstock away, and I'm just smoothing it out. There, I've flipped it around, and it's, next slide. It's real crucial when you're doing this plate that you only do like maybe an inch, especially this size, an inch at a time where you're shaping the plate. Otherwise, it'll vibrate really bad because you've got it fairly thin right out here. And so you want to do just an inch at a time, beat it, and then move to the next one. So on the second picture, I've marked the side of the groove right here. Next platter, or picture. Then I'm moving a little further, and I'm sanding everything. Just a 180, you don't care if there's scratches in it. You just want it to be smooth enough with no tear out at all. That's what you're trying to remove, is tear out. Okay, next one. Okay, that's where I've just beaded maybe about 1 inch of it. And then next picture on there, I'm moving it down a little further and then beading a little bit further on it. You can only do a little bit at a time. And then once you get this whole area done, then you can remove all this wood in here. No, I didn't. That's one thing I forgot, is to bring those beading tools. It would have been easier if you could see them. They're D-way beading tools. I really like them. They hold an edge really well, and they're easy to sharpen. There, I'm cleaning off the inside of the top of the plate. Pretty much, I'll flip it. Next picture. Yes. It's the letter D dash and then way, W-A-Y. David Swartzer is the guy that makes it. He's out of Shelton, Washington. And if you just Google D-way tools, you'll find him. Yes, very good steel. And here I'm burning it again, and then this part here, here, and here all needs to be sanded down to 400 or better so that you can burn on it. You want it very smooth texture for wood burning, otherwise it looks really terrible. You never get a smooth burn. So at least 400 for the center part. I like the maple that I got here with no glue on it. And he will order it for you, and it comes in a big ream of it, and I've probably used up half of it already. And I probably got it about a year ago. Yes, I did. It's a little thicker, and it smells really bad. So you're burning up plastic, so I'd rather burn up wood than plastic. I think it's probably a little better for you. Any other questions on that? Okay, next slide. Okay, here is my indexing my husband made for me. He doesn't have a really good picture of it, but it's off the lathe, and I usually have like 50 of these things ready for me to index. And then I sit there in front of my TV and just draw those straight lines in there with the pencil. It just slides along there, and I can mark out all the pencil lines. And now I've flipped it around for the back side of it to smooth this part out and take out the little dovetail that I had in here and smooth this all out in the bottom of the plate. I have a nice shop my husband built for me, and it's got AC in there, so it's nice and comfortable in my shop. And I have, when I'm turning, I have a Trent helmet thing that I put on, and an Air Pro, and then I have my dust collector going, and then we have the two boxes up on the ceiling that it's getting the microparticles out. So yes, I do. And we got to clean the AC filters in that area all the time. Clogs them up. Yeah, but definitely with the basswood, it's a very fine dust, and you want to wear something, or the next day you're coughing. It's really hard on you. Okay, and I'm sure you guys know how to turn it around and clean up the bottom of it. And I use a scraper on basswood. I've found it works much better than a bowl gouge, the scraping on it. And turning it up as fast as it'll go, and moving the tool very slowly across the wood. Well, I tried maple the first time I did it, and it turned great, and you didn't really need to sand it to be able to bead on it. But when you went to burn on it, it took a lot longer to burn it, a lot longer. It didn't burn as nicely, I didn't think. Basswood burns very quickly. Any other questions on that part? Then I'm going to go to this next part here. Oh, there's more slides. Go for it. Oh, I'm just cleaning up the bottom of it, and I'm burning this line right here and there. Oh, there's the tools. Those are the beading tools that I used. I used a 1/4 inch and a 1/8 D-way, and then the scrapers that I used. And those are, I'm pretty sure, Thompson, except for the one on the end, the dovetail. And that's it. Oops. Okay, this kind of goes in progression here. This is just indexed here. And then this is the first line that I've burned on here with my beading tool. And then I divide that in half. And then when I divide that in half again, I do it at an angle because it's easier on my eyes to go at an angle than it is to go straight up in between those lines that are really close together already. I don't know if you see this or not. Yeah, instead of going up like this, I'm going up one and over one, up one and over one. And so let me get this heated, and I'll demo that. I can listen. At home, I've got this IKEA chair with a footrest, and I'm sitting back there like that with my feet up, and I've got it right here, and I'm burning with my feet up, and I've got two IKEA lights that come over here like this, these little ones, and I've got them right where I need them. These little guys are really pretty nice. This is an Optima, and I have the flyer for it someplace. Well, I don't know where oh, it's right over there on that box. There's a flyer for the Optimas, and it's, I don't know if you can see this. Well, it's just the right shape for fitting into the beads. And it's got, when I get it, before I heat it up, I check it, and I'm going to be holding it like this, and I want it to be angled right for me because of the height of your hand. You want this side right here straight up and down. You don't, if you go at a little bit of an angle like this, because your hand's a little higher, you're going to get a scallop shape instead of a straight line. And so, no. They have a fish scale out here, and it's not quite right for doing this. I thought, ooh, I found just the right tip. It's the right shape, but it doesn't quite work to get it in there. I like a fixed tip. Okay, and it's a beading tip. And it's in that flyer, it tells you what number and the people that I get it from. Got to move this here. Is that okay? Okay, I just put it on there, rock it forward. And I'm putting a little notch there, and I can feel it. So when I go to line up the next one, I can feel that little groove.
That's the little pixel line that you put on with the index.
Correct. And I do have to watch what I'm doing there. And now here, you can draw this line on here, but I just eyeball it. Usually when my students, they all draw it on there.
It's autofocus.
Is it out of focus?
I can always back it out a little bit if you don't like that type of story.
I did all of that's on here yesterday, and I also did this side. But I wasn't going to show you that. That way it's all ready for me to do a wash of color over it. And so there you saw how I divided it up. It goes fairly quickly. What does it take? About 5-10 seconds for me to burn a line. No, I got to be careful not to like drink a Dr. Pepper and have a donut and then try to do this because it won't work. Now, when I go to do this, that's when I can't do, when I go to divide this next one up, I can't go for very long. This part, yeah, I can go, that's no big deal. But when I do this one, I'll start here, and I'll just go up one and over one. At home, I have a fan that's sitting right here, and it's not blowing on it, it's sucking the smoke away from me, but I figured there wasn't anywhere that I wasn't going to blow it in somebody else's face, so. Okay, so I think you guys, this is pretty easy to do, this part. But when I get to the herringbone part, that's a little trickier. Any questions on the burning of the beads? Yes, and I think it looks better that way. Oh, well, on the slides, I index it. See, these pencil lines were already there, and then I burned right on top of the pencil lines. And then I eyeball in between that. You probably can't see the pencil lines that are on here right now very well. At first, there's, the first is 100, I mean, there's 64, and so times 4. Around this side and the other side. And you could probably stop at the first one, but I think the pattern looks better like this. It's a more intricate pattern here than it is here. I just think it looks prettier. This one here is, the beads are tighter together. This one, they're a little larger. Well, these are 1/8" beads, but it's the lines that I've burned down here that are a little closer together, so this pattern becomes more intricate. They both look nice, but this is just a tighter weave, I guess you'd call it. Okay, now the herringbone. This is where I'll get a lot more questions. And I use a skew for this. And I just bought, I think, the last one they have. And I like the coal wood, and this one is a 3/16 skew. See that one? No, they don't. I think the only one that does is this guy, this one, the Optima. And Harvey Myers went to the guy at, that makes the Optima and got him to make it. So that's why it's just perfect for these beading. He took I think the rumor is he took the beading tools to the Optima guy and had him do it in one of his turnings. Okay, this is a progression here. This is the indexing here, and I've drawn a line right here to divide them up, so it looks like the squares on a piece of paper like this. What I'm going to do, here's this rim right there. where I've got the squares. That's step one. Step two is I've drawn a diagonal line from the center down. And then the next one, I go through the same way. And I'll demonstrate that. I did skip every other one because I thought it looked better for this particular pattern. When it was right in here, it was going to be too tight. It wouldn't look very good to have it like that. It was just going to be too small and hard to burn. And this was going to be much easier for you guys to see this size. Okay, so I'll put that over there and get out of the way. And so what I do first is on this one here, I went through this, what started here at this point, and I'm going to go to this point. So they're a little longer. And I'm drawing it out for you guys, but pretty much I don't draw them on anymore. Oops. Get those extra lines in there. And so, get that on. When I got to burn these lines in, I start at the heel and end at the toe. And I usually wrap it around my arm just so it doesn't keep falling off my arm. So I'll start here, sliding it down to the toe. So I've got those burned on. Next, I start at the toe and go to the heel. So I'll start down here, sliding it forward. And if I was to stop right here, it would be a herringbone. I mean, a chevron instead of the herringbone. The biggest thing you don't want to do is go through this second line. Well, yeah. What I've got is I use a little carving tool and I kind of use it as a scraper, and I scrape it off. But pretty much before I do that, I see if I'm going to burn over it and shadow it. Because the next step is to burn the shadow in here. Okay, next step, I need to test it. Make sure it's not too hot. And I've got it laying kind of on its side Same tip, didn't change it. No. You can see how it's creating the shadow. Do one more. I'm using the side of it. It's hard to tell on the camera, but I'm just using the side of it. Excuse me. I lay it down pretty flat and drag it across like that. I don't know if the camera is picking that up. And you just drag it across to shade it. If I was on a flat piece, I would use a shader, but since this is round and at an angle to the curve, it works better to use this. And then I would, for this other side, instead of going like this, it's the same direction. I'm pressing down and then lifting up as I pull away from that line I burned in first. Well, it kind of leaves little chunks of black on there, and what I would do is let it cool, and then I would strop it on the leather. It's got a little compound on it, and just polish it up. And the next step is to burn these corners in here. And what I do is I lay it down on its side even more, and just stick the corner in there and pull out. Pull and lift. And that just darkens that corner and makes it look like it's tucking down in there. Any questions on that? And then you can see these little lines on here. Makes it look, gives it a wood grain. And that's just pulling it along. I need a little bit more heat. It's very random. And then I'll go the other direction, starting at the top of it. And I do all of them like that. So there's lots of little steps on that. Any questions on that part? That's scraping. And this right here, it's got this eraser has a little, it's called a sand eraser, and it has a little bit of grit in it. And it will sand off some of the burning and lighten it up. And then there's sandpaper. And then when I'm all done with this, this is a not a Scotch-Brite, this is a Mr. Clean magic eraser. And what I'll do is I'll go over this and clean up the extra smoke on the beads. Works really well to clean it up. It'll pick it up. You can see that I've got quite a bit of blackness on there and we're using it. Any questions on that herringbone? It looks easy. looks easy, but it's a little trickier than, I've done it a few times, so it's easier. Not really. It's the same thing on the outside as it is on the inside. And then once I get it, all these lines here burned on, I will come back and I'll erase with this all of the pencil lines in there. Make sure they're completely gone, and then I use an old brush, paintbrush, and make sure that I've got all of the, it's actually, it is from Azel Art Supply, but used to be used for when you made an error, when you were typing on an old-fashioned typewriter, and it would sand it off. Yeah. But it works really well for erasing your mistakes, and it will lighten up your burning. It isn't going to clean it up completely, but it will lighten it. Okay, so there's no question on that herringbone. That's a lot of practice. This part here is fairly quick to do, all the little beads. It's the herringbone that's the trickier part. And in my last class, some of the people, they didn't do the herringbone, they just did 4 lines going up on, and just did some colors, and that looked kind of neat, just doing the 4, giving 4 colors, matching what they did. So that was cheating. Next, I'm going to go over how to do the painting. This is the design I'm going to put in on that. It's just a simple pattern. On all of my patterns are indexed to an even number of 8 or 4, or, it'd be 2, but it's an even number of them so that my repeat will match up, and it will fit on any one of these patterns will fit on whatever size. I could take this pattern and put it here, doesn't matter, any of them. I like the repeat of 8. And so when I'm teaching a class, they can pick any of the patterns out and just put it on there. Makes it very easy. And when I go over this, I make my students, I've got this big box of colored pencils, and they mark out a grid, count 1 through 8, and then I make them count how many beads they have on their pattern and mark that out so they get the repeat going on it. And then they just use these colored pencils to get their pattern. And there's quite a few different colors that they can pick from. And I've got paints for them to use. It's not the ones I'm going to use tonight, but I've got some student quality paints that I have, a dozen sets so everybody can easily do it. But we're just going to do a quick, easy pattern for tonight, and it'll look like this. So that's this pattern here. I do have them do it on paper first and work out their pattern. Otherwise, they'll make their mistakes here in counting and everything on the grid here, and then they know what to look for when they go to put it on here, onto the piece of wood, and they're more comfortable that way. This little guy here is the same pattern. It's just a really small, and it becomes a little flower. It's the same thing. It's just this becomes very tight in there. Okay. I need to take a little break and or somebody can get me some water. Go ahead. Water? Yes. No. No, this doesn't matter. It's just whatever fits on there. On this plate here, I tried to do 9 beads so that the pattern works out into a nice little square. There is 9. Correct. It is 9 for that part right there, from here to here. And so that's all that will be on there is this little square. I tried to do that. So that part is 9. This one here, the repeat on this particular one would be different. So on this front side, I'm pretty sure there was 9. Nope, there's 10 on this one. This one here has the 9. And I don't know if you see the pattern on here. It's kind of an L, a dot, and then another L.
Where do you leave the blank if your pattern is 9, and you don't have an even 9 coming out? Where do you?
It just sometimes if there's I could leave a space above or below it. It can work out. That's part of the fun, especially when they're doing a bigger one like this, as to figure out how to do this pattern here. This has a certain size, and you need to have a big enough center for your sunflower. This one's not completed at all. This one has all these colors in rings going in, like the center of a sunflower.
But on that one, I can see that you have all your blanks out towards the outer edge. So
Right, I did. I had 3 extra for this. I use watercolors. I use a brush. I know that most of them use a pen, and it's India ink. Well, I used those at first, and that's what's on this taller one there. And I got about halfway down with the brown, and the pen ran out. It dried up. And then I went and got another one, but then the dye lot wasn't the same. And so I had to go over it and blend it in, kind of hit and miss, so that you wouldn't see it. And I thought, there's got to be a better way on such a big, and no, I haven't. I like the tiny little brushes that I'm going to use that get in here really well. This is the type of paint that I use, and this is color swatches so that I can look at the colors, and it is on watercolor paper, and it's going to be a different color here than it would be on the wood, because this is a white background and that would be yellow, so that does change the colors. No. If it does, it's wood, it's natural, it'll look more like a basket. Right, the wood burning keeps it from bleeding. When there's ingrain, like on a basket like this where the ingrain, it's still going to wick a little bit. Even with the pens, it still would wick on the ingrain. And I was at first using a skew before I found the beading tip, and I was using a skew to make these lines here. And what I found that if I wasn't careful, I'd burn right through the bead. I was too hot and I just burned right through the bead, pressing too hard. And what would happen on those, if I burned them really deep, all of them, that if the grain was just right, those beads could easily pop off with the water. So these, when I burn them, they're just burnt on top of the wood, not cutting through it. Something to be careful of, because you could pop those off over time. So next, what I'm going to do, let's see, I like to use these little ceramic plates. I get them at Kroger. They're pretty inexpensive, and they wash up really well. Let's see. These are the core paints that I like. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. I'm not showing you how I burn the flowers and stuff. Do you guys want to see that? Okay. I'll go back. Okay, I'll just draw a sunflower on here really quick. There's the center, and this is the size of the petals. And I'll just that's a center line I drew on there. This is just kind of sketching it out. Well, I could do that, but I'm pretty practiced on this for right now, so. Yes, you could do whatever you want. I've got little. So that's pretty quick, little sunflower. And that's where I need this tip. It's a little, what I call a shader. And this is, the Colwell is the same brand. It's got the cork on it, so this is a Colwell. And it came with a really hard edge on this right here. And I sanded it off and made it round on the bottom. And of course, I've bent this right here to fit my hands so it was comfortable for shading. And this is where I really want this part. With this one, there's a lot of metal, so I'm turning it up pretty high to heat it up, and then I'm going to turn it down to, it's right between the 3 and the 4 on this particular machine. Each one of them, even if it is an Ultima, it will be set just slightly different, and there's a little knob in the bottom of this, or it's the back side, where you can adjust that. And just because it's burning fairly light on this piece of wood doesn't mean it's going to burn really light on this piece of wood, because they'll have different pitch or moisture in it. I'm going to start right here, this one, and kind of and that pencil line that I put on there, that was just a guideline. I've kind of got it at an angle. It's not flat on the piece of wood. I really like this Lazy Susan for burning. It makes it really go a little faster. Now I'm kind of bringing the line out a little further, and I'm going around in little circles, leaning to the right side of the shader. That just brings that line out a little further. Do any of you guys wood burn? And I'm not pressing hard on this at all. It's a very light touch. A sunflower, where it attaches to the center, it kind of rolls on itself to create a funnel so the moisture goes into the seeds. That's what I'm going to put in here next. To erase this line. Then I'll put a line down the center. I'm going around in a circle. And it just makes the outside edges kind of curl up. Now I'm just going to in 8 minutes? Okay. I wasn't watching the clock. I'll kind of see how that's done. Just keep working on it. Okay, let's do, instead of painting in little squares, let's go for the wash of yellow. Yep, it'll go very quick. I use, this is a 5/0 round, very small. This one, yeah, they're both 5/0 rounds. Okay, and you need to get a bigger brush out. This one to paint in the flower is a number 8 round. Oh, it's going to be bright. I'm just adding water. And the great thing about wood burning, it kind of seals up the wood, so where the dark burn is, it's really not going to color it in much. all the work is in the burning, because you've already got the shading on there. You could come back with a white colored pencil and put in some white highlights. You can kind of see I did that on this piece right here, where I put some white in there. Yes, what I will do is first I spray it with DEF, and if you were worried about the color you put on there, you might find one that has UV protection and spray that, and then I put the wax on. I really slop it on there and really let it soak in. I mean, I really glob it on, and that's where this came in, right here. Yes, it is. That's using that shading tip that I did here. It's just burned like that. Very high. It's branded there. So it's probably at a 7 or an 8 for that. But you saw how quickly that went on. And then I would do a wash of gray blue in here in the middle, and it would look like the sky and kind of a cloudy sky. That's why I had it kind of blotchy looking. With this, with the DEF. And I like a matte, but I couldn't find matte, so this is a satin. I don't want it to be really shiny. And I did oil these just before I left. I sprayed them and oiled them just a few minutes before I packed them in there. Oh, I'm sorry. It's feed and wax and the DEF. No, I haven't. I don't want it to be shiny because the basket should be kind of flat. It shouldn't be real shiny, in my opinion. This still has some of the oil soaking into the center. Takes a while on the part where it's been burnished, really heavily burned, because it kind of seals the pores off. This? Oh. After the watercolors, probably the next day. It should be, especially here in Texas, it should be dry enough. But it's all in the wood burning, and I'd probably come back over this, and maybe you can see in this one that I've put a little bit of a darker yellow right through here. No. Because I've burned it in kind of... there's probably been burned on every bit of it. And then I've come back and I've lightly sanded on areas like right there, right along here where I wanted it to be as light as possible. So if it's burnished, then it's not going to raise it up. And there's a place on here where I actually dropped it on a corner of a cabinet and made a large dent in it, and I really dosed it with water, and you can't even find where it was dented. So that's really nice about basswood. It does, if you dent it, it does raise back up. Just 2 light coats. You're just trying to set the watercolors so that when you put the wax on it, it doesn't bleed. But like this plate, I waited a couple days, and a lot of people were handling it, and the sweat from their hands was bleeding the blue out into the edge here. They would touch it and then rub along there. And that was in Washington, Oregon, and it was kind of on the coastal area where it's damper anyway. And so I was noticing that the green, the turquoisey color was wicking up into here.
Do you use the colored pencils on the patterns, the little squares?
No, I do not. You probably could, but I don't. You could probably color in with the colored pencils. I haven't tried it. You could probably do watercolor pencils as well, but you would use, keeping it sharp enough to get down in between, you'd probably use up that colored pencil really quick. This brush, once it gets, it looks fuzzy there, but once it gets loaded up with color, that one's gone through students, so these are about a $2 brush. And so it goes to a pretty, my hand's shaking, pretty small point there. So you can get in here and color these beads in without worrying about getting the other one. When you use those pens, that tip's pretty fat, and it's really easy to hit the bead above. The brush is much more accurate. And I use it, it's a round, but it's a spotter size. It's a shorter bristle. If you look at this one, the bristles are fairly long. You don't want a long bristled brush. You want a short bristle because it'll flex too much. I'm pretty much done except for questions. Just once a year, like normal. Thank you. Thank you. While I don't know if there's time, but I was going to let